Welcome. Are you sitting comfortably? Are you focused and not thinking about whatever's bothering you these days? I'm not here to test you. Please relax. Let your thoughts come and go and listen as they fade away in the distance. For better or for worse, this is where your life has brought you. Looking at a screen, listening to me. Imagine, for a moment, that you've just had a child. It's healthy, but unfortunately also completely blind. For their whole life, they will live in the dark and not see a thing. Their perception of reality is something that you might never be able to comprehend. How would you describe the world to them? What can't be touched or heard, smelled or tasted? How would you describe sunlight? By what it does? Or how it feels on their skin? I think I'd play them this piece of music. First composed by Tchaikovsky in 1878, these rays of light have traveled through decade after decade, finally reaching your ears this very moment. You have also traveled far to get here today, but you're only passing through and should probably get going. While you're here, I'd like to tell you a story. It all happened to me when I was young, walking in a forest much like you are. Those were days filled with boundaries and rules. Of no running in the hallways, don't do this or that or the other. With my world full of fierce discipline, I walked the forests to breathe. One day, deep in the woods, I found a funny-looking tree, crooked, old, and wrinkly. With little work, a few bits of bark became huge ships. Calm creeks turned to ferocious oceans. I can still recall the people I imagined dragged downstream, with a sense of guilt. As I gazed back upon the old tree, I noticed something peculiar. It was crying.
Every crumple, like eyes closed tightly, clear drops streaming silently down its wrinkly skin. So I did as children do, tasted it. Not because it looked tasty, but to figure out what it was. The first drop made my tongue tingle.
The second made it prickle. And the very moment the third landed on my tongue, a profound sensation
spread through my chest. Undefinable, like thirst, both vague and specific. One thing was clear. Something was changing within me. I remember breathing in and out, feeding the fire.
prickle in my fingertips. I studied them closely, discovering circular ridges in a foreign landscape
Of my skin, the prickling soon slipped my attention. It would be another week until it returned, a wave of gentle needles moving over my skin.
A limb falling asleep, perhaps.
I did not start worrying until it returned
for the third time, first making its way up my neck, before engulfing my skull.
Completely from behind, I could even feel the tiny needles covering.
My eyeballs.
but it did not stop there.
I held my breath as the smallest thorns crawled around my lips before spreading into my lungs and stomach.
My awareness spread with it.
And I remember the strangest sensation of my mushy dinner in there.
As if I held its remains in the palm of my hand.
Suddenly, my body took control and opened my mouth.
An explosion of air rushing into my lungs. The tingling spread with it through an endless web of veins, soon reaching my beating heart. For a moment, I stood in awe of the activity
Within my body, I felt my heart beating faster.
and my skin sweating. Your body is your only vessel in this world.
And when it is the case, the claustrophobia is total.
Seek help.
I thought,
And at that very moment, the tingling needles shot from my brain down through my spine. I felt them
Scattered through my upper leg. My muscles contracted to lift my knee. My body weight shifted forward.
And a shock wave spread from the foot sole as it landed softly on the ground.
The process repeated itself in greater detail for every step.
I was overwhelmed, but my body kept moving. I did not at all feel like the boss giving directions.
It all happens automatically.
And I was simply alone.
For the ride.
Like you.
The doctor's office was cold and white. Crossing the floor felt like a polar expedition. My pale and distant features of the landscape. I wanted to explain,
but was unable. My lips and tongue engaged in an intricate choreography.
Choreography. Myself and the audience observing the words performed.
my
lips muttered.
I'm sure it will pass. While my thoughts were crying for help. conversation kept going, but I stopped paying attention.
Instead, I was following the hands of a clock mounted on the doctor's wall. They were both
speeding up and slowing down.
I was slipping further and further away. A levitating camera in a video game.
Merging with the code it was running on. Again with the binary, with the electronics and so on. I closed my eyes and let my sensations lead me.
First, I spent some time with my bones.
Among their many functions, I got lost in their continuous breathing. An uninterrupted flow of calcium absorbed and released.
Even my skeleton was
Alive and living in and
of itself. I could feel my mind clinging to the known, to the clattering thoughts, the buzzing of memories and fears for the future. But for each breath, tension was released, and my shoulders sunk comfortably. It had certainly felt like I was in there, somewhere behind my face. But I was nowhere to be found. And the more I looked, the more hazy
I became.
When my eyelids eventually opened,
They felt as slow as a sunrise. Photons, converted to neurosignals shooting along the optic nerve, each carrying a piece of information into the darkness. The brain categorized motion, colors, edges, distance. I sat for a moment in the dusk, watching the sunrise. When the world eventually lit up, I was no longer wondering why matter lights up from the inside. My experience had changed from the fire to the light it emits. But it would get much stranger still.
started daydreaming.
So I thought. It began as the shimmering field creeping slowly in from the periphery of my vision.
The hands of the clock, still moving, but among them vague shapes.
Slowly but surely,
I saw trees flowing past me, and among them, myself, sitting right there in the doctor's office with a vacant expression. While walking around myself, I was surprised to still see a clock straight ahead. Myself from the side, the clock on the wall. The two images were not overlapping, they just coexisted. Like imagining a familiar place with your eyes closed and you see both nothing and something at the same time. I turned to look toward myself, but saw only the face of the doctor, lingering somewhere between confusion, concern,
and annoyance. However,
when I studied his face closer,
I was struck by terror.
the image of myself had turned.
To look straight into my own eyes. I felt my own hand reach out towards myself, the weight of my hand landing softly on my own shoulder.
Eyes distant, looking at the doctor, looking at myself.
Rules and boundaries
disappearing.
Spreading.
A delicate wave of nostalgia washing over me. Intimate recollections of past sorrow,
relationships,
Education and even medical experience.
and at last,
I was no longer alone.
not in the sense that the doctor was there in the room, but rather that we were together.
In the darkness of my mind.
A vast number of sensations were still flowing, but now with
Two observers to share the burden.
of sight, a hand picked me up.
And as I kept breathing,
The fire kept spreading. Soon, it swallowed my parents, sitting in their chairs, doubting my story.
I felt contradicting opinions and ideas
coexist, but not in conflict. Different notes in harmonious chords, shaping a balanced, indivisible whole. More clouds spread into my vision, and more sensations through my body. The music was evolving. I looked at my hand. 5 fingers against a surface felt no different than 5 bodies or minds. Branches becoming aware that they were connected to the same trunk all along. Their experience my own, all of them present in my mind.
The prickling kept spreading. Each needle on my skin, another presence in my mind.
more and more observers sharing the burden.
A vast number of sensations flowing.
My world,
Like musical sunlight, just passing through. Every individual going about their business.
strangers on the street unaware that
they were all each other, their surroundings, and me.
I knew and felt them all as I knew and felt myself.
And I could no longer feel contempt, or that anyone was somehow
Less deserving. There was no longer me and you, no us versus them.
It was all just me. As I kept breathing in and out, each new
Breath pushed me along a ubiquitous landscape that was simply
too beautiful to ignore. What lay past each tree and
Beyond every hill was another idea I knew to be true.
mountains, transient
shadows of matter.
flowing through time, slowly from one point
Point of view, but for the mountain itself,
Oh boy,
it's in a hurry, like everyone else.
both the whirlpool and the stream.
an expression of energy floating through empty space. All experiences merging to one.
There I was,
all of us, you, me, I. The light that shines through the film. All else is smoke and mirrors.
Not
because the story has an ending, but because it keeps moving, leaving us behind.
my body kept living like yours will, with surfaces preserving its illusion of separateness. This screen,
Our very own eyes.
I couldn't tell if I ascended or dissolved.
I'm soaring through space.
but unable to move, nevertheless. And as I turn in orbit, the boundary between
light and dark keeps moving. A cascading wave of thoughts, arriving at dawn, just to slip away at dusk.
A violent competition on a speck of dust suspended in nothing. An energy field fumbling in the dark, trying to describe myself. I want to be safe,
Well fed, not too warm, not too cold.
to be acknowledged by my closest.
So even though you are another part of me looking back, you will always be a stranger.
A lump of resources for my exploitation. The branch is cut.
Our hemispheres separated once again.
Rocks sleeping along the surface, never sinking in. The inconsistent dash of beauty between the noise, picked up by a stranger
With good intention, and with it, sentenced to die. I don't care who you are, or how you found me. We are both reaching
A few lonely rays venturing through space in just the right direction. Absorbed in our leaves, stored as
Sweet sugars and exhale as crystal and clean oxygen.
and while the light warms our skin,
or while we wait for the next sunrise.
we breathe.
Is that you are here, right now. And for a moment, we are together. You and me as one.